Hi everybody. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how to write a poem. So this is based a little bit on what I found on writers.com, how to write a poem step by step. Now, and I highly recommend that you email me to purchase my book on the craft of writing poetry for beginners and advanced poets. You really have to get my book. It's part one. I will be extending each part of the book to make it a series. But if you want that part of my book that's out, you can buy it privately from me. I will send you the link after you pay the fee. So email me if you want to buy my book on writing poetry. As I said, there'll be extended versions of each chapter that you'll have to purchase as well if you want those extended versions. But here is a little free little mini course on how to write a poem in about 7 steps. But I'm going to give you some additional steps. So this person, I think, gives you about 7 steps, if I recall. So I highly recommend also that you watch my video that talks about how to show emotion in poetry, because often that's where people get stuck. They have these emotions they want to show, but they don't know how to. So they're like, oh, I have a topic, but I don't know how to show emotion, so I can't write the poem. So I recommend watching that video that I have on the channel that teaches you about how to express emotions in poetry. So here we have this website that says how to write a poem in 7 steps. Let's zoom in here. Excuse me. So devise a topic. So I think that you should always pick your emotions first and then the topic, because it's like you have the topic, but it's like those emotions don't really go with that topic. So I can't write on that topic. You don't want to get stuck like that. So you could go online and pull up a list of all types of emotions. Now I find that the only way you can get around picking your emotions first is if you are character role playing. If you're not writing specifically about how you feel, if you're being someone else and trying to show their feelings and emotions, then you can pick your topic first. So decide, are you trying to write something that's personally about you and how you really feel? Or are you trying to be someone else in the poem, or someone else who is speaking about whatever you're writing about? So the narrator. So are you being you as the narrator of your poem, and or who's being talked about, or you're being someone else? That has to be decided first before you know how you should pick your emotions and when. So let's say you're like, oh, I'm going to be Maya Angelou. And I'm going to be Maya Angelou, and the topic is going to be Maya Angelou talking about the problems with young people today, and a conversation or experience that she had with a young person who's very modern. Let's say that's your topic, and you picked it, you compressed it, and you really came up with a main idea. Of course, you would have to research the personality and character of Maya Angelou in order to get into the true emotions and feelings that she would probably express in that type of topic of that poem. You wouldn't write from you because you're being Maya Angelou. So you see, so you do have to pick your character, and you got to know who is speaking, and if there's anyone in the poem, who is in the poem, and are you writing about you, or are you writing about someone else? Are you writing as you, or you're writing as someone else? You have to know that. I always like to first know who I am. Am I really me? Am I me of this time period? Me from my childhood? Am I pretending like I'm my father or my mother? Am I being someone else? Am I being something else? Am I being an animal? I have to know that before I can even pick my topic. That's me. It works for me every time, y'all. It works for me every time. I find it so easier to pick a topic that I can really fall in love with and really get some writing done about. Becomes easier to write about. So let's zoom in more. So they say devise a topic here. So they say a few places to look for inspiration. Other works of literary. Now, what's funny is it makes me so mad when they say this because that's not really telling you how. So you do need to take a little course in learning how to use other works of literary for your inspiration and to find your topics. So this doesn't actually tell you how, it's just saying to do it. But in a private lesson, if you are my student, I teach you various ways how I do it. One way to do it is to simply just take a note of what is being talked about in the poem and figuring out what the subject matters are. Remember that poetry can have multiple subject matters. I highly recommend that you take the Poetry Masterclass by Bill Collins. He talks about that. Or you can buy my book. I have a section in my book where I talk about subject matter. Okay? So that's when you're getting, when you can figure out the subject matters of, I say matters because it can be multiple subjects. When you can figure out them in the work, then you often can figure out what the main topic is about. So that's one tip. Okay. Remember that you can use the same topic, just a different experience. So she talks about We Real Cool. And Gwendolyn Brooks here, her poem, We Real Cool. You could use her structure, because no one can copyright the structure or outline of their poem. There's no such thing. You cannot copyright that. You can use her topic. So she says, We Real Cool. So perhaps you can write a poem about how y'all was real cool. What made y'all real cool? Consider the time period, consider the generation, and what was going on in the world, the culture of the people, and location when you get into We Real Cool. Okay, if you're using her topic. So, yeah. Okay, you can do like juxtaposition, add some dark and shadow, the good and the bad, the light and the dark. You can also start at the end resolve. Danielle Teasdale has a video that says how poetry can save a life, and it talks about the end resolve. So that's something you have to know. Even if you get the topic, you still have to know what it means to start your poem. You still have to know how to begin a poem. Okay? I do teach that in my book. There's things you have to know, like how to begin a poem, insight into sight, which John Drury talks about in his book, Creating Poetry. And you still have to know about the end resolve. That Danielle Teasdale, poetry teacher, teaches about as well in his online video, how poetry can save a life. That's a wonderful video. I did that. I did the exercises in that video, and I came up with so much content. It was unbelievable. Exceptional stuff I started writing. So there's that. Now there's also the world events you could use here. So you could get actually public domain newspaper and articles it's really good to use like copyright free or public domain articles and news stuff, because I mean you can pretty much use a lot of it and you won't have to worry about being sued. Okay, unless you are writing a found poem. So you can write a found poem using real world events, even testimonies, witness testimonies, even stuff you saw on TV. So it's not just a real world events in the newspaper, but it could be like series, like the show Snap, like series on TV that's like talking about real true crime cases. I find that true crime cases are one of the best things to use to come up with a poem. Okay, because everybody likes crime for some reason. Also, cases that are world events that are about grief and suffering. People love to read that kind of stuff. People just do. So if you can find that kind of stuff to write about, that would, controversial stuff, like people, cigarettes, okay? Maybe you had a fight with someone about a cigarette. What would be the end result? And you would write about the end result. So this person wrote about a cigarette, but you could take a different approach. As writers, we tear stuff up and we make it new. So we will read the work of other people and say, okay, well, how can I come at this from a different perspective and a different angle? How can I do like the what if exercise, and write about this in a different way? That's what writers do. So you can take a world event that's about smoking and cigarettes and stuff, and that has to do with smoke, and you can see how you can write your own poem and use a different approach and a different end resolve to write your version of writing about cigarette smoke. You could just make it general, like smoke, not just cigarettes. Okay, you can say, well, this poem just isn't about cigarettes, it's about smoke. Yeah. Okay. You could go even deeper. You could say, well, what else can smoke be? Smoke can be many different things. Then that helps me to find other topics, other inspiration. So here we have your life. Okay, now one thing I find out about this, you have to start getting used to journaling, especially what you're doing to get through stuff. So let's say you have an argument and you do stuff afterwards. That's the stuff that makes great poetry. Let's say someone dies and then there's stuff you do that week that has something to do with someone's death or how you respond to their death. That makes great poetry. Let's say fights, arguments about stuff. What happened after? That makes great poetry. So one thing I found out is like, as soon as you go through stuff, and it ended, write about everything that happened after that. You can if you kept track of what you're thinking and then doing after you're thinking about what you've been through, and you kept track of what you were doing after that, you'll find that you have actually a lot of things to write about that has to do with your life. Okay. So if you live a life of where you're constantly responding to what you've gone through and different things, you will have so much work. So, like for example, when I wrote my Pushcart nominated poem, the last time I had to see you, I literally wrote it in the car right after I left the funeral home. So right after I picked up my father's ashes, I sat in the car and I started writing what I could remember happening in that room after his ashes were brought in the room. Like right when his ashes were being brought in, I sat in my car afterwards and wrote about that. Okay? Um, and you literally have to do this within a few days, or you will forget how would happen right after something. So let's say someone dies and you don't write about it for a month, you most likely will not remember so much of the things that happened afterwards. So it's like you lost great ideas, great content. Okay? So always journal about what happened after something in your life. What happened after. Okay? So it's like, what happened after you got after someone asked you for a divorce? After um, you met to finalize the divorce? Um, or after you got off the phone to meet to discuss the divorce? What did you do? Um, After you were handed the divorce papers. See, all that is poetry. Okay, all that is where the poem begins. So I'm giving you ideas on using your life. So I never forget when me and my husband were trying to save my marriage, and I say my marriage all the time, even though it's our marriage, because I hold so much of the fix it, Mrs. Fix It seat in the marriage. So I always say my marriage. But anyway, I remember we went canoeing, and it was like a little vacation we took, and I said, okay, we're trying to fix our marriage. So what did we do? We went canoeing, and even though we weren't actually talking about our marriage, we were doing things in the canoe that was like two people trying to bring something to the relationship to fix the marriage. So it still fit. Okay, the topic still fit with the event. So that's just some ideas. Okay, you could use your photographs. You could use conversations. Like, say you get in an argument with a police officer, that could be a poem. Let's say you overhear someone fighting in a grocery store, about groceries or something. That could be a poem. So it's not always about your life, like what you've gone through. It's also what you witness and what you hear and what you see. If you be very nosy, you'll also come up with a lot of content. Writers tend to be nosy people. Okay? If there's nothing in your life to write about, just write about somebody else's life that you had the pleasure of being a part of or seeing. And I say pleasure because it's a reward if you're a writer. To be a part of anyone's life, it's a reward when you're a writer. Okay? All right, that quote is copyrighted and protected by me and shall not be used without my express permission. Do not use any of the lessons and tips in this video without the express permission of all the authors, including me. So anything that I've taught specifically in here, please do not use without my permission. So the everyday new day, okay, it could be as simple as a cup of coffee. Some little thing that you're doing. It could be just how you take care of a plant or something. So stuff that you think is mediocre often becomes great poetry. Like Bill Collins' poem, How to Write Poetry. That's like us day. Everybody that knows that. But everybody's ritual for beginning to write a poem most times is different. Even though it may seem silly to think that your whole writing ritual can be a poem, it still can be a very good poem. You can actually use the same title that Bill Collins used, How to Write a Poem, How to Begin to Write a Poem. And then you write yours, okay? So this lady wrote Ode to Shea Butter. So you can write an ode. You can write an ode to pepper. Maybe you love black pepper. I remember like one season I fell hopelessly in love with black pepper. I was literally putting black pepper on everything that I could. So I could write an ode to black pepper. Of course, I can add similes, metaphor, personification. I could even do some research on black pepper to see if I can add some of the info in the poem. So that's just a tip. Next, what we have is nature. A single little snapshot of something happening in nature can end up being a great poem. So, and often nature poems tend to be really good when they're like short, they're under 30 lines. Most people don't realize that a good nature poem, nature-based poem, does not have to be long. Most of the times, if you're using different techniques like symbolism and personification and all that, then the poem ends up being pretty good, even if it's 20 lines. With nature poem, I think it's important to put in literary devices, a variety, so that people don't feel like they're just hearing the same old thing about nature. Okay? It's a fine line because you can kind of get too literal at times with nature. But sometimes that is good. You just don't want to get too literal because people will say, well, I've heard all this before. So I say if you're going to use the topic of anything in nature, make sure that you're not getting too many cliches, and not too literal. All right. So writing exercises. This is really good. The thing about when people do writing exercises is they forget that they can use the example poems to find their way into their own poem. So, for example, when I wrote my poem, A Muse Prefer, I wasn't sure how to start my poem based upon the exercise, My Muse Prefer. I wasn't sure how to begin. So I used the structure and outline of the example poem. And after that, I was able to really get going and really write the poem. So don't be afraid to use the exercises, the exercise poems, the sample poems, to extract the outline and structure of the example poem and use that to write your own poem based upon the exercise. So they have 24 writing prompts here that you can look at, writing exercises. I know that this book called Wing Beats, that's good. Sheila Bender's book, Writing Personal Poetry, and The Poetry Gymnasium. Those are 3 books that are really good. They have really good poetry writing exercises. Also, the book, The Practice of Poetry. You might want to get that book too. So, The Practice of Poetry book, Writing Personal Poetry, that book, Wing Beats, there's like 3 in that series, I think, and The Poetry Gymnasium. Those 5 books are really good. As soon as you feel like you're not inspired and you're stuck, just do the exercise. Keep in mind that poetry writing exercises take time, okay? Because some of them come with specific instructions. So if you're a true writer, don't try to rush through doing the exercise. It may take you an hour and a half to get that poem done, or it may take you your entire writing time, but at least you wrote something, okay? It's not about how much you write as a writer, it's the quality of the work that you're writing. So you can write only 20 poems, but they can be so good that they win a big prize, okay? So write your best work, and who cares about how much work you write? Just try to get right at your best at whatever you're writing. who cares how long it takes? When I wrote my pushcart nominated poem, it literally took 3 months. I wasn't sure what stanza to take out, the order. I kept tinkling around with it and then leaving it, coming back to it, leaving it. Till finally I went back to it the third time and felt like it stopped me in my tracks. When it took my own breath away, I knew that I felt like I could accept it for the moment the way it is. And I say for the moment because poetry is never finished. It's just kind of abandoned and accepted the way it is for the moment. All right. So once again, if do not use any of my personal quotes and lessons and little witty things I've said without my express permission. So let's see what these writing exercises are. We're going to look at that in a minute. But you might want to just go to this website yourself and look at the whole article. It's on the writers.com website, how to write a poem step by step. So look at these. Let's look at these writing exercises here. Let's look at this. See what they say here. So they have all this. Check out our online writing courses. Okay, here we go. Write without using adverbs or adjectives. I like this one because then if you do decide to add your adverbs and adjectives, you'll be picky. You'll be picky then. I'm not big on the whole amount of words to use, but if you like that, go right ahead. Write without using pronouns. So let's see. They said 24. I don't see 24. Let's go down here. Okay. Here are some other ones here. Write metaphor list. This is wonderful here. Because you can literally write poem after poem after poem if you've already created a bunch of metaphors. Because there is a such thing as called a metaphor poem, where you have a lot of, your poem is focused around that one metaphor, and you're just stacking metaphors of other subjects within that poem. But they're all celebrating or connected to the main metaphor that you chose off your metaphor list. Okay? All right. If you want a deeper lesson into that, you'll have to hire me. Okay. So here I see this Write Your Picture book. It's funny because most people they don't get into most writers don't get into learning art, visual art. But we are in a world now where people love to see art in poetry books. So this would be actually a good exercise course to take. Let's see what they say about this Write Your Picture book. It's funny they say write. So let's see how much they charge for that. So they said character, storyboard, topics, and picture ebooks. I see they don't really say the price down there. $395. I figured it would be expensive because literary based picture books are selling like hotcakes now. So of course they're going to make the course expensive. This would be really good because people have a short attention span now. So if you can write short form writing, like short poetry more, you'll be able to crank out, and it has to be good short poetry, because people are very critical about short poetry. They're like, oh, if it's going to be short, it better be pretty good. So this would be really good, something to take, short form poetry, short form writing, because you would be able to get a lot of writing done. All right. So another website to uh, find poetry prompts and really good poetry exercises and lessons is the website Albany Poetry. Okay, you can go on there. Albany Poetry. It has a wonderful beginning to advanced poetry course that is free. You can take it right on the website. So here, this course here, the short form, is $295. I personally think these courses are overpriced, especially since you can actually buy books much cheaper that will walk you through writing this stuff. So that I find that the poetry courses online are overpriced. Like if you can buy the books to teach you for only $20, why sit up there and charge $295? No. This is why a lot of new writers go after grants. Okay? Because see how expensive this stuff is? But if you learn from me and other writers who have taken courses in short form writing who don't overprice the course, you can learn it much cheaper. Okay? The lyrical essay, I think is important because you can always turn an essay into a poem. So then you would have what you call a lyrical poem. All right. Yeah, I don't see too many. Okay, here's some more prompts here. Daily journaling. This is good. Track your mood and emotions through the day. This is why they say a writer always writes. Because if you don't, you miss out on some great stuff. Charles Bukowski was always writing. He actually wrote so much that he lost a lot of his work. Submitting so much work, he didn't back it up. He didn't make copies. Like hundreds and hundreds of his work was never returned to him from publishers. He was talking about that. He wrote about every single moment of his day. Of course, you're going to hit a jackpot poem eventually. If you're writing about everything you're feeling and experiencing, every end resolve of every single thing you're going through every single day based upon your thoughts, eventually you're going to write something pretty good. Okay, I mean, even if it's all literal, all right, you're going to write about something that everybody didn't think to write about. Okay. All right, I like this. Write about your day backwards. I like that one. I like that one. Yeah. Okay. But the problem here is people think that the things they ended with is not a big deal. Remember, everything can be celebrated in your life. Every little thing you do can be celebrated in a poem. If you know literary devices, symbolism, and things like that, you'll find a way to celebrate whatever you think is mundane or mediocre that you have done or that you have seen. You'll find a way. There's always a way when you know how to use certain literary devices. Okay? This is nice. Write about your day from the second or third person. Write about your day using Freytag's Pyramid. Let's see this one here. Freytag's Pyramid. Oh, wow. So you might want to get this here. You might want to screenshot this. Okay. The 5 key stages of a story. Now, and of course, a poem is not exactly a story. But within the story is the poem. How about that one? So if you write a short story, you can always extract a big part of a poem out of here. And then take it to the finish line. Finish it. Okay? the poem would begin like somewhere here. Okay. Um, yeah, it could be here. So if you write the whole story, there would be a climax. There would be the rising action, which would also, but in poetry, it would be sort of the response of the rising action. So, like with my father, it was like, okay, picking up his ashes. The rising action was I have to finally close his death out. I have to pick up his ashes. All right. So I wrote about the ashes coming into the room, and then my response was like the climax, like how am I going to handle this, and what I thought and what I felt. That was it, climaxes, and then the falling action. And my poem was um what he did, okay? What the Undertaker did. I didn't let the falling action be me. Um I didn't add a resolution in my poem. All right. A lot of times poetry really doesn't need the resolution. It's all up to you. It doesn't need closure. Like, oh, it's nicely completed at the end, and like, oh, I drove away from the funeral home and I didn't look back. That's unnecessary, because in poetry you do want mystery. I like the reader to decide, like, what did I do after I got his ashes? Like, did I what did I do after I left the funeral home with his ashes? Did I look back or whatever? Did I look back at the funeral home as I drove away? Nah, I felt like that didn't need to be in my poem. I felt like that was like, okay, tying up the poem. Now, and of course, how I responded to having his ashes, that could have been another poem. Okay? So I just kind of explained it, but you can write it as a story. So you can write your whole story out and then extract parts that you know could be um, a poem, or part of a poem, or start a poem. Okay? So here's his pyramid here. So for me in my poem with the rising action, going to go get my father's ashes, I decided to start in the room, in the ashes coming in. And this was like, oh, how much are the ashes? How am I going to respond? What's the problem with the ashes? How do I feel? What are my emotions? My reaction? And then how did it come down? The falling action? Did I push the ashes away and stomp out? Or did I sit there and let the Undertaker and decide? Did I just felt like it was unnecessary for people to know what the final action was? The falling action was the Undertaker's response. What he did. I did not want anyone to know this part. I wanted it to be mysterious, where the reader decides, like, oh, did she take the ashes? Did she? I wanted to leave my reader guessing, but it's all up to you. Okay? So, this was a nice little lesson here. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to let me know. If you want to show appreciation for this lesson, you can send a donation, a cash donation, to my Cash App at #CoachVHunter. Also, if you want to hire me to coach you in writing poetry, you can hire me. Email me, and we'll discuss the course and time frame and the fee. If you'd like to purchase my book, How to Write Poetry for the Beginning and Advanced Poet, please email me. If you would like me to do a quick assessment of your poetry, of course, for a small fee, you can email me. If you are interested in reading my work, purchasing my own work, you can email me. Okay? Thanks for watching. Bye.